Welcome to EconWorks. We live in an era of massive platforms, global supply chains, and unprecedented market concentration. But behind every headline about a merger or a legal settlement, there is a deeper mechanical struggle for control. On this show, we pull back the curtain on the invisible forces shaping our economy. We look past the talking points to examine where law, power, and markets actually collide, and how those collisions redefine the world we live in. Coming to you from the EconWorks desk, we're diving into a breakdown of the systems that run our modern life. This is EconWorks. Today we have episode 2 of the AI versus Judge series. AI takes on the Apple App Store market definition.
It took a federal judge 16 grueling days of trial and 185 pages of complex legal reasoning to dissect this multi-billion-dollar war between Apple and Epic Games.
Yeah, an incredibly dense ruling.
Right. But today, we're looking at an artificial intelligence that did the exact same thing in a matter of seconds. And it didn't just give a, generic summary.
No, it actually found the exact same fatal conceptual flaws in the core economic arguments as that human judge.
Welcome to the deep dive. We are taking the raw power of AI and pointing it directly at one of the highest stakes antitrust battles in modern history.
It really is a fascinating collision of worlds. We're talking about the intersection of cutting-edge artificial intelligence and highly technical, incredibly dense economic law.
Yeah, and the implications go way beyond the courtroom.
Oh, absolutely.
So we're pulling our insights from this brilliant experiment detailed in an EconWorks blog post. It's titled AI Critique in Antitrust Episode 2, Epic Games v. Apple. And our mission today is to answer this mind-bending question.
Right. Can an AI truly interrogate a dense, highly technical expert report?
Exactly. Not just read it. Yeah. Not just summarize it, but actually stress test the causal links.
Right.
And find the hidden weaknesses in a really sophisticated human argument.
Which is something that matters to, anyone who has to make decisions based on complex information.
Yeah, which means you listening right now. I mean, we are all dealing with information overload. We're all handed proposals, data sets, or, pitch decks that sound incredibly convincing on the surface.
Very convincing, yeah.
You might not be litigating against Apple, but you're absolutely being asked to trust persuasive arguments in your own life. So this deep dive is kind of a masterclass in how you can use AI to cut through that noise.
And interrogate the information you're given every single day.
Right. But to really appreciate what this AI was able to pull off,
Right.
we need to set the stage first. We have to understand the human battlefield.
Yeah, the timeline and the stakes here are crucial to understanding just how complex this task was.
Take us back to the beginning.
So back in August 2020, Epic Games, they're the developer behind the global phenomenon Fortnite, they decided to go to war. They sued Apple.
Over the App Store, right.
Exactly. Alleging massive antitrust violations regarding how the App Store operates. And this led to a massive trial in May 2021 in San Francisco.
A huge spectacle.
It was. The district court handed down a ruling in September 2021, and then the Ninth Circuit largely affirmed it years later in June 2023.
And the entire war, I mean, all the billions of dollars on the line, all the expert testimony, it all hinged on one foundational economic concept.
Market definition.
Market definition. It sounds like a really dry textbook term, but it is the absolute fulcrum of antitrust law.
Because how you define the market dictates whether or not a company is legally considered a monopoly.
It dictates everything.
Yeah, let's look at the two opposing narratives that were presented at trial. Epic's expert economic witness argued for what we call a narrow market.
Meaning just Apple, essentially.
Right. They defined the relevant market strictly as iOS app distribution. In their view, if you have an iPhone and you want to download an app, there is no market. There is only Apple.
It's a completely locked ecosystem.
Exactly. They argued Apple allows absolutely zero competition, and therefore they are a monopoly abusing their power.
But Apple naturally went the complete other direction. They argued for a broad market, specifically the mobile handset market.
Yes. Apple's defense was that they are in this fierce, constant global competition with Android, Google Play, Samsung, all the other manufacturers.
Emphasizing that before you ever download a single app, you make a choice as a consumer.
You choose between an open system like Android or a curated closed system like iOS.
The legal argument from Apple relies on a concept called reasonable interchangeability, right? And cross-platform competitive constraints.
Yeah, they argued that the broader market is what actually keeps their behavior in check.
Okay, let's unpack this. Hold on. Reasonable interchangeability sounds like something a corporate lawyer just invented to confuse a jury.
It does sound like that.
Because in plain English, you're just saying, I can buy a Samsung instead of an iPhone.
Well, essentially, yes.
Because from a user's perspective, my iPhone feels incredibly closed. Like, if I want to download a game today, I have exactly one store I can use.
Right.
How can Apple seriously stand at a federal court and say there's competition when they literally control the only front door to the phone in my pocket?
That is the exact tension at the heart of the case. What's fascinating here is that antitrust law generally doesn't look at a single product in a vacuum after you've already committed to it.
Okay.
It looks at the competitive landscape at the point of decision. Think about the smartphone market, like buying a car.
A car, okay.
If you buy a Honda, you are somewhat locked into buying Honda replacement parts or using their certified mechanics for certain warranties, right?
No.
You are in their ecosystem.
Right, but I chose a Honda.
Exactly. And you had the choice to buy a Toyota or a Ford in the first place. That initial choice is what economists call the for market.
Okay.
Apple's argument is that the intense competition happens in that for market, choosing the smartphone ecosystem itself. If a consumer hates the closed nature of the App Store, they're perfectly free to buy an Android next time.
Right. So that competitive pressure, that constant threat that millions of users might jump ship to Google, is the invisible hand that constrains Apple's behavior.
Precisely. It prevents them from acting like a true monopoly.
Okay, that makes sense. But because defining that specific market was so, contentious, Epic Games submitted this massive, aggressive, highly complex economic expert report to prove their narrow definition was the only correct way to look at it.
A very dense report, yes.
And that dense legal document became the ultimate testing ground for the EconWorks team. They wanted to see if an artificial intelligence could spot the economic flaws in that exact logic.
And the researchers set up a brilliant but fairly straightforward experiment. They didn't train a custom million-dollar AI from scratch.
They just used commercial models.
Right, commercially available models. They started by taking the actual publicly available expert antitrust report submitted by Epic's side during the litigation.
Step 1. And in step 2, they fed this massive document into the AI and essentially asked it to play the role of the opposing counsel.
Yeah, they told it to critique the economic reasoning, specifically focusing on market definition, the competitive effects, and the evidence of harm.
But the real magic of this experiment is what happened next. Step 3.
Right. The researchers took the AI's critique and laid it completely side by side with the actual findings of fact and conclusions of law.
Issued by District Judge Yvonne Gonzalez-Rogers.
Yes. And this is a 185-page legal ruling written after a grueling 16-day bench trial featuring testimonies from top economists, tech executives, everyone.
So for step 4, the alignment test, they're directly comparing the unassisted reasoning of a machine against the highly deliberate, extensively informed ruling of a federal judge. It's essentially like taking a highly technical, aggressively argued legal document and running it through a stress test simulator, just to see if the AI gets tricked by fancy economic jargon right.
That's a great way to put it. And it highlights a really important point. For most people, the biggest hurdle with AI isn't the AI's capacity.
What is it then?
It's knowing exactly how to ask the right questions when the task gets complicated. Prompting an AI for this kind of task is less like typing a search query into Google and much more like cross-examining a hostile witness.
Oh, interesting.
If you ask a witness on the stand a broad, open-ended question like, what do you think about this report? They'll ramble. They'll just give you a vague summary.
I have to balk at the man.
You have to box the AI in. You
Yeah.
have to establish parameters. The researchers had to instruct the AI to specifically hunt for logical inconsistencies, to question the causal links between the data and the conclusions.
They made it adopt the persona of a critical economic reviewer.
Right. You are forcing the machine to evaluate the architecture of the argument, not just read the words.
And the stress test worked. The AI processed the report, generated its critique, and when the EconWorks team compared those results to the judge's ruling, the alignment was staggering.
It really was.
But before we reveal exactly what the AI found, we need to know where the human judge actually landed on this whole market definition debate.
Well, the judge actually rejected both extreme narratives.
Really? Both of them?
Yeah. She didn't buy Epic's super narrow iOS app distribution market, but she also threw out Apple's super broad mobile handset or all digital gaming market.
So she threaded the needle.
She did. She landed on a market defined specifically as digital mobile gaming transactions.
So she looked specifically at the transaction of buying a game or making an in-app purchase on a mobile device, whether that was an iPhone or an Android tablet.
Correct. Both ecosystems.
Yeah.
And within that specific defined market, she found that Apple held a 55% market share.
55%.
And they enjoyed persistently high, frankly staggering profit margins.
But this is the crucial distinction in antitrust law, isn't it? Having a 55% market share and making a mountain of cash does not automatically make you an illegal monopoly.
Exactly. The law does not penalize success. She ruled that Apple did not wield monopoly power because consumers and developers still had meaningful alternatives.
Escape valves.
Right. If things got truly oppressive on iOS, developers could focus on Android or push users toward web-based games or prioritize dedicated gaming consoles and PCs.
There were options, which brings us to the AI versus judge scorecard. Because the AI didn't just say, I agree with the judge.
Oh, no, it went much deeper.
It independently identified the exact same 5 core conceptual weaknesses in Epic's expert report that the court highlighted in its ruling. Let's walk through them.
The first flaw the AI identified was the market definition itself. The AI pointed out that Epic's narrow market was artificially constrained.
It was just too limited.
Right. It noted that the expert report seemed to ignore the commercial reality that developers write games for multiple platforms, and gamers often own multiple devices.
Okay, that makes sense. The second flaw was a direct hit on Epic's aftermarket lock-in theory.
Yes, Epic argued that once you buy an iPhone, you are trapped in this expensive aftermarket where Apple can do whatever they want.
But the AI argued, and the court ultimately agreed with this, that consumers generally understand the deal they are making.
They do.
When you buy an iPhone, you generally know it's a closed system. The App Store policies and that, famous 30% commission, they weren't some surprise trap sprung on users after they bought the hardware.
Exactly. You knew what you were buying. Then we arrive at the third flaw, which focused on the evidence of consumer harm.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
The AI pointed out a massive gap in how Epic's expert attempted to prove that Apple was hurting consumers.
And I have to push back a little on this one, because I think a lot of people listening will feel the same way.
Sure.
If Apple is taking a flat 30% cut of revenue from developers, isn't that automatically harming consumers through higher prices? I mean, it's essentially a massive tax on the digital economy.
It looks that way on the surface.
So how does the AI and the human judge look at a 30% tax and say, nope, not enough proof of consumer harm?
It feels counterintuitive, but if we connect this to the bigger picture, this requires understanding a concept called counterfactual in antitrust economics.
Counterfactual.
Yeah, you can't just look at a price tag or a 30% commission rate in a vacuum and declare it illegal. Yes, the court acknowledged there was some proof that prices were higher on iOS.
Okay.
But to prove antitrust harm, economists have to model a parallel universe.
Wait, really? So they literally have to invent a hypothetical timeline?
Essentially, yes. They have to create a counterfactual showing what the prices would realistically be in a truly competitive alternative world.
Wow.
And the AI recognized that Epic's experts simply did not provide a robust counterfactual. They didn't show enough anti-competitive effects compared to a world where multiple app stores existed on the iPhone. High prices alone aren't illegal if the underlying market structure justifies them, or if competition wouldn't necessarily drive that 30% number down anyway.
So it's not just about the absolute number of the tax. It's about proving mathematically that the price would be significantly lower in a vacuum without Apple's restrictions.
Exactly.
That is an incredibly high bar to clear in federal court. But that still leads the issue of Apple forcing people to use their specific payment system.
Right, which leads to the fourth flaw. Tying and steering restrictions.
Epic argued Apple was illegally tying 2 different products together, getting the app onto the phone and processing the payment.
And here, the AI dismantled that logic by identifying the App Store as a two-sided market.
Okay, what exactly does that mean in this context? Because to me, it just looks like Apple's selling a service to a user.
A two-sided market is a platform that connects 2 distinct groups who need each other.
Okay.
Think of a credit card company. They have to balance the needs of the shoppers holding the cards with the merchants swiping the card.
Oh, I get it.
If they charge merchants too much, stores stop accepting the card. If they charge shoppers too much, people stop carrying the card.
So the App Store is balancing developers on one side and gamers on the other.
Yes. The AI noted that app distribution and in-app payments aren't separate products you can just neatly untie. They are heavily integrated features of a single two-sided platform.
You can't easily change the rules for the developers without fundamentally altering the experience or the security for the gamers on the other side.
Precisely. Now, it's worth mentioning that Epic did win one very small, highly specific victory on this point.
Right. They prevailed on a narrow California unfair competition law claim related to anti-steering.
Yes.
Basically, the court said Apple couldn't stop developers from putting a button or a link in their app telling users they could go pay cheaper prices on the web.
But on the massive, sweeping federal antitrust claims regarding monopolies, Apple won.
Which brings us to the fifth and final fatal flaw the AI spotted: legitimate business justifications.
Right. The AI pointed out that Epic's economic report heavily understated the very real, tangible benefits of Apple's closed ecosystem.
The benefits that actually draw users in.
Exactly. Specifically, the enhanced security, the strict privacy controls, and the consistent user experience that draws people to the iPhone in the first place.
And this fifth point is actually where this entire experiment reveals something incredibly profound about artificial intelligence itself.
It really is the twist.
Because up to this point, it sounds like AI is just this flawless, omniscient oracle playing federal judge. But there's a massive catch in the EconWorks data that proves not all AIs and not all prompts are created equal.
Right. The researchers actually ran this exact same experiment with a second, different leading AI model.
And that second AI only identified 4 of the 5 issues. It completely missed the 5th flaw.
Entirely. It overlooked the deeper critique regarding Apple's legitimate business justifications for security and privacy.
It totally whiffed on the privacy argument. Why? If these large language models are so incredibly powerful, how does one spot a nuanced argument about ecosystem security and the other misses it entirely?
It comes down to how large language models process information, specifically the divide between quantitative analysis and qualitative reasoning.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, LLMs are highly mathematical. They are built on token prediction and statistical weights. Counting a 30% tax or tracking a 55% market share is relatively straightforward for an AI. It's quantitative.
But weighing the abstract value of, consumer privacy against a hard financial loss is a totally different tier of reasoning.
It requires qualitative judgment. Abstract human-centric values like, is a locked-down phone safer, are incredibly difficult for a standard AI prompt to weigh against hard economic numbers.
Oh, wow.
The model that missed the 5th flaw likely got hyper-focused on the financial data and the market share percentages. It simply didn't have the sophisticated prompting required to elevate the qualitative concept of security to the same level of importance.
So relying on just one AI to summarize a complex document is like asking just one person for directions in a brand new city.
Exactly.
You might get to your destination, but you might also miss a massive roadblock along the way. That is a huge insight into how we interact with these tools.
And that variation demonstrates the core takeaway from the source material. The goal of this experiment was never to prove that AI can replace human economists or federal judges.
Because cases require detailed empirical analysis and expert testimony.
Exactly. They require observing a witness's demeanor on the stand and crafting legal strategy over years of litigation. AI cannot do that. AI is a tool for interrogation, not final adjudication.
But it is the ultimate tool for interrogation. The EconWorks piece highlights what they call the highest ROI approach, return on investment for everyday users.
Combining strong prompting, iterative refinement, and specifically using multiple AIs.
Right. If you want to use AI to tackle complex information, you need this 3-pronged strategy. First, you need strong prompting.
Like we discussed, you have to box the AI in, tell it exactly what persona to adopt and what specific logical fallacies to hunt for.
Second, iterative refinement. You don't just accept the first output, you push back. If it gives you an analysis, ask it, what is the counter-argument to this? Or what qualitative factors are you ignoring?
And third, you use multiple AIs.
This is key.
You take the output from one model and feed it into a completely different model and ask it to interrogate the assumptions of the first. You pit them against each other.
You force them to debate.
When modern business decisions depend so heavily on complex analysis, having tools that help you interrogate the hidden assumptions behind those analyses is just invaluable. It forces you to think deeper.
So what does this all mean for you? You probably aren't going to wake up tomorrow and litigate a billion-dollar antitrust lawsuit against a tech monopoly.
Probably not.
But you are going to open your email to a dense proposal, a confusing financial report, or a persuasive pitch deck trying to sell you on a specific narrative.
Happens every day.
What this deep dive shows is that you now have access to the exact same analytical stress test that can dissect a 185-page federal court case.
By using multiple AIs, setting up constrained, cross-examining prompts, and asking iterative questions.
You can uncover the hidden weaknesses in any argument presented to you. You do not have to be an economist or a lawyer to find the fatal flaws in the logic.
This raises an important question, though, one that goes far beyond just practical utility at work.
Oh.
The source material makes it emphatically clear that AI cannot replace judges today because it lacks the ability to conduct real-world empirical analysis. It can't look a witness in the eye.
Right.
But think about the trajectory we're on. As these models evolve to align so perfectly with the complex, heavily nuanced reasoning of a federal ruling in a matter of seconds, where exactly is the line between critiquing human reasoning and replacing it?
It's moving so fast.
If an artificial intelligence can independently spot the exact same 5 conceptual flaws as a highly trained, experienced federal judge, at what point in the future does the human judge simply become a rubber stamp for the machine's critique?
Wow.
We use simulations to stress test our arguments now, but eventually we might just trust the simulation more than the human evaluating it. You have to wonder when our legal system and our society will cross that tipping point.
That is a wild thought to leave on. Keep stress testing those arguments, everyone. We will catch you on the next deep dive.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Econ Works. The goal of this series is to move beyond the surface-level descriptions of how markets work and start looking at the actual architecture of competition. We'll be back soon with another look at where the law and economics meet the market. For the full technical analysis and more from this series, visit us at econworks.com. If you found today's breakdown valuable, please subscribe and share the show. It helps us keep the analysis independent. From all of us here at Econ Works, thanks for listening.